Hello and welcome to the webinar here at Glasgow Caledonian University, organized by the project Mainstreaming Innovation. My name is Branka Dimitrijević and I will moderate today's webinar. Our project supports collaboration between 9 Scottish universities and businesses in developing innovations for low-carbon infrastructure systems. The project is funded by Scottish Government. Before we continue, just a few housekeeping points. If there is any interruption due to fire alarm or interruptions in online connections, please do try to rejoin us later. You will also be able to watch the video recording of this webinar in a few days. You can start using chat facility at any point during the webinar to ask questions, and they will be answered after the presentation. Just a few words about our project. Our project supports collaboration between businesses and researchers regarding innovations for energy efficiency, landscape and biodiversity, energy generation from renewables, water, waste, and low-carbon transport. If your business needs a research input for the applications that you might be preparing for the EU, UK, or Scottish funding programs, please do contact me and I will connect you with researchers at these 9 universities. There's a clear path towards the verification of new environmental technologies assists businesses to bring their innovative products to market. Today's webinar on Environmental Technology Verification Program will explain how that can be achieved with the assistance from National Physical Laboratory. Our speaker today is Jessica Cross-Brown, who is joining us from her office in Teddington in Middlesex. I would like to welcome Jessica now. Jessica, please start your webcam and turn on your mic now so that we can see and hear you.
Hello.
Hello, Jessica. Welcome. I will kindly ask you to start with your presentation now. And when you finish your presentation, then there will be maybe 30 minutes of time to answer the questions that our online viewers will ask. You're welcome to start now.
So, good afternoon, everybody. As Branka mentioned, my name is Jessica Cross-Brown, and I work at the National Physical Laboratory, which is the UK's National Measurement Institute. So, within the National Measurement Institute, we do a lot of work around obviously keeping the primary standards that everyday life depends on, such as volume, weight, mass, time. However, we also do a lot of work and research and development into new types of technologies and how best to help test and hence improve them. Because if you can't measure a technology, you don't know how it's working and you can't improve upon it. So I work within the Centre for Carbon Measurement. The centre was set up nearly 2 years ago after it was seen that there was a real need for a collaborative effort both throughout the laboratory but also externally to help tackle key issues with climate change in the following areas. So the centre covers 3 key themes, the first being climate data. So we work with partner organisations throughout Europe and internationally to try and increase the accuracy of tools and sensors that are used, particularly on satellites, to measure climate data and climate variables such as ocean colour or temperature throughout different layers of the atmosphere. Obviously, the more accurate these measurements are, the better the models are that are produced and the less scepticism there can be around projections of possible climate change and global warming. The second theme is carbon markets and accounting. So carbon markets and accounting, we do anything from measuring highly accurate measurement of direct emissions such as methane from landfills or from carbon capture and storage, through to actually looking at the methodologies that are around carbon accounting and how we can make those more accurate. And we do work around carbon footprinting or validating carbon savings models that large companies might produce, which are too complex for a normal consultancy to handle. And third area that we work in is low carbon technologies, and that's really why I'm speaking to you today. So for low carbon technologies, we do basically anything from early stage R&D through to validating performance claims. So the next slide I've got here, I'm not sure how aware you are of the technology readiness levels. They were originally thought up by NASA, and we use them a lot at NPL to identify where we're working on a technology, how far along the chain it is. So TRLs range from 1 to 9, and 1 is early stage. It's an idea, or it's a concept. Going through early stages is proof of concept, R&D, testing prototypes in the lab is maybe TRL 5 once you've got a working prototype. And then through to TRL 7-8, when it's, which is really the discussion that we're having today around technologies that maybe are market ready but are very novel and innovative. 9 is where it's commercially available and deployed. So NPL works quite uniquely across these TRLs. So often you see academia sitting quite early on in R&D stages of technology development, and obviously businesses normally pick it up slightly later on when the risk is less and it's a proven technology. So NPL sits somewhere in the middle, and the theme that I'm going to talk to you today about, environmental technology verification, actually sits very well in the middle of these slides. So really between 6 and 8 is where environmental technology verification, or ETV, sits. So this is another slide based on the TRL, and it's something that I put together previously when thinking about how ETV sits and how it supports SMEs and innovative technologies. And basically what we see at NPL, we work with SMEs and technology providers throughout the chain. So from early stage product development, we work quite a lot on fuel cells. We work on, one of the main issues with fuel cells is corrosion. Fuel cells like to be left on at a consistent level over a long period of time. They don't like to be switched on or off. They don't like the power output to be changed too much. And obviously, if you think of the main use of fuel cells is for electric vehicles, those are key parameters or key features that need to work, because the car is going to have to accelerate, turn on, turn off, etc. So we work with a number of companies trying to develop measurement techniques to help understand why these fuel cells are corroding in vitro. So in the cell, why is it corroding? So that you can have a working fuel cell to test. Project financing is the next stage where we see a lot of issues where technologies are at prototype stage and they need to scale up, and they're having problems with investors basically either not believing them or wanting to see some evidence that the technology actually does what it says. Finally, market take-up. So I've got some examples later of energy efficient lighting, which is a perfect example of a technology which is proven, works, and is ready for market, and actually it's taken years for the technology to be significantly established in the market due to skepticism, people not wanting to change. And so these are areas where we work with technology providers. So ETV, environmental technology verification, sits between those two barriers I mentioned just now, so between project financing and market take-up, in the final stages of the technology sort of journey to commercialization. So in a nutshell, ETV is basically a way of saying it does exactly what it says on the tin. We've all heard of it. We know, I don't think anyone can forget the Ronseal adverts. And basically, that's what ETV does. So for novel technologies, they can help to provide the assurance that a technology performs as is stated. This becomes especially important for novel technologies. Normally industry standards aren't available, or for some technologies, industry standards are particularly biased towards older generations of technologies, and so these new technologies coming through perform very differently under different conditions, and it's, they're not being compared like for like. So ETV works by a verification body essentially providing a third party assurance that the technology provider is telling the truth. So you come out with a statement which says exactly how the technology works, under what operational conditions, which you can then go to an investor and say, it's for them really a due diligence exercise. So we've been working quite closely with sort of end users, investors, to understand what it is that they're really looking for in a technology and what their main concerns are, and what holds them back from either making a large purchase or making an investment, which are the two barriers that ETV is really aimed at, those investment or commercial take-up. So in ETV, there are three key players. The first are the SMEs, or the innovative technology providers. So ETV is predominantly there to try and help support SMEs with innovative technologies. By doing this, we're helping to provide the third-party assurance that smaller companies often require when talking to big names or big investors. And then on the flip side, we're actually providing a risk management tool for investors by saying that the technology is safe to invest in, because actually it works at this performance, which is better than what's out there on the market already. It has these innovative features which others don't have, and it works. We can also verify the durability and the lifetime, which is something that we see a lot of the time coming back, that actually investors or end users aren't worried about the energy efficiency, for example, or performance of a technology. What they're really worried about is that because it's green or environmentally friendly, they think that it's not going to be as hard wearing as dirty or less environmentally friendly older alternatives. And then the last stakeholder who's really involved in ETV is our policymakers and regulators. So ETV comes from the top down through the European Commission. So it's a European Commission-led scheme, and it's a pilot programme led by the European Commission. However, it's being organised and fed through DEFRA in the UK, and the Environment Agency and the SEPA, the Scottish Environmental Protection Agency, are very heavily involved in ETV, and they see it as a great way of overcoming barriers that new technologies are often facing with lack of take-up. It not only then helps to provide the initial extra confidence that SMEs might need to go and speak to investors, but it also provides a database of the best available new technologies, which SEPA or the Environment Agency or Scottish Enterprise, DEFRA, can then use to help put the right support in place, so they know what cutting edges actually at that time in the market. Because I think with standards taking quite a long time to catch up with what's actually out there on the market, ETV can provide a snapshot of what is the best new technologies that are coming out onto the market per year, and then relevant incentive schemes or standards or regulations around supporting these new technologies can be put in place quicker. So, key features of the scheme are A, there's no pass or fail. So, ETV is really aimed at technologies which aren't covered by current standards, either because they're so new that the industry standards haven't been written yet, or industry standards may be in place, but they may be archaic in their nature or measuring the wrong parameters, or often they're asking for a bare minimum value for a performance, and actually new technologies might go above and beyond what the standard is expecting. So it's hard to stand out, especially if if it costs more, but it actually is more energy efficient. Standards often won't show that up. So the key factor for ETV is that the SME or the technology provider chooses the performance parameters to be measured. So if your technology works particularly well under certain operational conditions, harsh environmental conditions, etc., this can be something that's written into your ETV protocol, which then would show off your technology or show it its best advantage. Also, it's a very dynamic process. Unlike certification schemes or standards, ETV is seen as quite a supportive, program, so that the verification bodies are really there to work with the manufacturers rather than against them. So there's a lot of open discussion. The verification bodies can help to define, refine performance parameters that technology providers might put forward to be verified. And what you come out with is a tailor-made verification statement, and that is that's the output. The end product is this statement of verification, which is published on the European Commission website, which states exactly how the technology works, under what conditions it works, so that this can be then used for purchasing requirements or for investor due diligence to really show why the technology goes above and beyond what's out there already. So this slide really is to give an overview of how ETV differs from certification. So something that we're asked a lot of the time is ETV a certification scheme, and it's not. So certification schemes here, they're normally for established technologies, as you can see. So ETV is really for novel technologies. Going back to the TRL diagram, it's really for technologies in sort of 6, 7, 8. So they're a proven technology. They may be ready for commercial deployment. However, they're either the first of their kind on the market, or they're entering into a new market. So it's an established technology, but into a new market. And so, the certification programs that are set up wouldn't be relevant for it. Again, it's emerging into the market. That's why ETV, its number one goal is to help increase market application. And there aren't those standards in place yet. Testing for both is done under the same standard, so 17025. So tests that will be used for ETV need to be done by a test laboratory which has ISO 17025. But the verification body, so that's NPL in this instance, is accredited to ISO 17020 rather than 17065, which is for certification programs. So there are some key eligibility requirements for ETV. The European Commission have been very adamant in the development of ETV since its sort of inception. They want to make sure that the brand of ETV is kept of a high standard and has good connotations. So there are some eligibility requirements which all technologies wishing to undertake ETV need to meet. The first is that it's an environmental technology. This may sound obvious, and in its most basic sense, what that means is it has to be less environmentally harmful than relevant alternatives. So this is really covering the European Commission's back in terms of making sure that the life cycle of the product doesn't have any nasty elements in, because we don't want to put a technology into the ETV scheme and then find out later that it actually uses a rare earth metal which has been mined very badly from some country. So something that the verification body needs to see is just a very basic overview of the life cycle of the product. So how's it made? Is there a plan for its end of life cycle, and how it actually performs. So does it perform better than other technologies out there? It has to be an innovative technology. This is a tricky one to try and quantify, and something that the technical working group at the European Commission, which NPL are a part of, are still discussing and honing. Essentially, it just needs to be clear that it's facing barriers to market. If it's an innovative technology, it should be anyway, because if it's novel and innovative, it's likely that there aren't any other technologies like it on the market. Is it ready for market? Now, this is an important one on two aspects. The first is, from a SME or a technology provider perspective, it would be a real pain or a waste of money to undertake ETV if your technology isn't final yet. This is because ETV and this verification process is really a snapshot of how the technology works. So there is no time lapse for your verification. So once you have the ETV statement for your technology, it lasts indefinitely. However, if you have the ETV done and then decide to change the technology significantly, the ETV statement may not cover the technology anymore because it may perform differently. So we always stress to technology providers to try and make sure that it's a finished product when they undertake ETV. However, on the flip side, we also do encourage people, if your technology is not ready for ETV yet, but it's looking like it will be in the next year or so, it's best to get in touch with the verification body as soon as possible, because tests are required for ETV. And if you're going to undertake tests anyway as part of the product development, if you can liaise with the verification body ahead of time and say, we're going to do these tests and we want to do ETV later, a verification body can say, okay, well, if you want to do a verification later, make sure you keep in mind, try and test this and this, and do it in a lab that is accredited to 17025, and in that way you're not going to have to duplicate any of your tests again, saving you money. So that's really something that we would stress, is to just get in touch even at an early stage, because we can help to plan for the future if you do think about doing ETV later on in the product development. And final eligibility requirement is that it has to belong to one of the 3 themes that the European Commission have chosen for the pilot programme. So that's waste, water or energy. And there's a sort of unwritten eligibility requirement on top of those 4, which is that it shouldn't be covered by current standards, or at least not benefiting from them. Now, this would tie in anyway with, if it's a very innovative technology, it's likely that there aren't industry standards specifically for that technology. But we don't want to duplicate the work of standards and certification schemes that are already out there. So if you're happy that your technology already has a certification scheme or a standard which really, benefits or shows the technology off to its best, then ETV may not be right for you. So I'll just do a quick run through of the technology areas and some examples of the types of technologies that we're expecting to come in. So NPL is at the moment, the only verification body in the UK for energy technologies. So, as I mentioned previously, there are three technology areas which the European Commission has put into the pilot programme: water treatment and monitoring, materials, waste and resources, and energy technologies. So why are energy technologies included in ETV? This is actually what I've listed here are common throughout all of the themes that are included in ETV for the pilot programme. Firstly, it's rapidly growing and it's diverse, but also technology financiers and the end users, energy companies, are incredibly risk averse. It's a regulated industry, as is the material waste and the water industries. It's regulated, and so people are very careful about due diligence and risk management. But from an end user perspective, actually also greenwash, the idea of greenwash or environmentally friendly technologies, people can be very sceptical. We often get people coming to NPL SMEs who are having to prove that the technology lasts as long as others that are out on the market, or that it's durable in certain conditions, because people just have a general sceptical outlook sometimes onto green technologies, unfortunately. But also, it's a really competitive market, and I mean, energy technology in general. I mean, that covers such a broad range of technologies, and I'll list some of them later. But energy efficiency, renewable energy, waste to energy, and within those there are multitudes of different technology sectors, and each of those different sectors has different requirements. And it's very hard for new technologies, and especially new generations of technologies, to get through the bias there is often to established technologies. And I'll give you an example later of solar, new generations of solar, and the sort of barriers that they're facing. So within NPL, we saw 5 key areas as really benefiting or would benefit from ETV for the energy theme. So we have solar energy, and that includes solar, thermal, thin film, organic, novel types and new generations of solar technologies. Energy efficient lighting, in particular LED lighting. We have a lot of expertise in-house for energy efficient lighting. Fuel cells, I mentioned earlier, we work very closely with a number of SMEs to try and help overcome barriers to fuel cells. And obviously, fuel cells, some fuel cells that are quite an early stage. However, there is commercial deployment of certain types of fuel cells for certain types of industries. And the extra assurance that ETV can give, I think, would really benefit this area. We've got marine and wind in here. Obviously, wind is a funny one because it's actually a very established technology and doesn't really need an extra assurance scheme like ETV. However, if there are new generations of wind technologies or marine technologies that are competing with these established technologies, then something like ETV might give them an extra edge. And finally, smart infrastructure. Smart infrastructure covers a real range of technologies, so it's actually one of the most popular technology areas we're seeing coming into NPL for ETV, and I think the main reason for that is it's really badly covered by standards at the moment. It's very new, very novel, and things like smart meters, but more smart plugs, smart appliances that come in fall between the gaps in terms of certification, and they're just sitting there. It's so frustrating for them because they're really sitting there with technologies that are ready to be used, but they can't get large-scale purchase orders because they don't meet any any standards or certification schemes. So I said I'd give you an example of technology that faces these kind of barriers, and solar and the new generations of solar are a really good example of where standards are in place for the technology. However, they're very biased towards established technologies. So for the solar industry, it would be silicon photovoltaics, PV. And essentially, one of the key problems we find when we work with companies who produce new generations of solar technologies is that the standard that is in place uses a test which doesn't really give you a good indication of how the technology works. So for solar technologies, the current test basically is to shine a very bright light onto a solar panel at 25 degrees, I think, read off the energy produced, and that's your final value in kilowatts. So the parameter is the unit is kilowatts. Now that's all well and good when you're in a laboratory condition where you can keep an eye on the temperature, weather, etc. However, in real life, we all know that that's not the case, especially in somewhere like Great Britain, where the amount of sunlight we get, I mean, we may get 1 or 2 days a year at midday on a sunny day when we get the kind of light intensity that is used for the current solar standard test. So for new technologies such as thin film or organic PV, they actually work more efficiently than silicon at lower light levels, which for Britain would be ideal when we have lots of cloudy days and throughout winter. However, when they undertake the current solar standard test, it looks very poor in comparison to the silicon PV technologies, and so investors who maybe don't understand the technology particularly well, or for end users, again, who don't understand the technology and just are looking at, comparing numbers and prices, they're going to choose the silicon technologies because they do look better on paper. So ETV then could provide you a tailor-made verification where we would test the technology at lower light levels or light levels which are consistent with the average light intensity in the UK. And even you can include in your verification to compare it with a silicon PV module, which is a market leader at that time. And in that way, then you'll get a true comparison and a true idea about how well the technology performs, hence hopefully increase the investor confidence, but also for these technologies get larger purchase orders. I also mentioned that energy efficient lighting is a big part of the work we do at the centre. So the picture here is one of my colleagues, Paul Miller, who's a scientist at NPL, specialising in lighting. And the lab that he's in there it's got two names depending on the type of tests that you carry out in it. So it's either the gonio-photometer or the gonio-spectroradiometer. Now, we can measure anything from total luminous flux, so light output, the light distribution, so where the light is being emitted, the colour of the light temperature, and also the energy efficiency. So energy efficient lighting is another one where we find for large purchase orders, we've done quite a few projects where we work with large chains of either, so we did some with a large well-known brand of hotels who were thinking about putting LED lighting into a lot of their hotels, and basically wanted the assurance that the lighting would work how they expected it to, and that it would be warm enough for people to feel at home when they're in the hotel. We also work with supermarkets. Supermarkets are very worried about lighting making the food look bad, so certain types of LED lights can make meat look very grey, and obviously that's not what the supermarkets want. So we basically can provide them with the assurance that, you know, the technology, the lighting is going to work in the specific environment that they need. NPL cover energy technologies under ETV. Our colleagues, WRC, they're based in Swindon. They are the other verification body in the UK, and they cover water and waste technologies. So this isn't my area of expertise, but as Branka mentioned earlier, I see that within mainstreaming innovation, water and waste are key themes. So I've put in here a bit of information about these two areas. If you want any more information at the end, just let me know and I can put you in contact with our colleagues over at WRC. So water, why was water included in the pilot programme? Again, very similar to the energy technologies. The water industry is very risk averse. They need a lot of on-site testing, field studies, etc. And essentially the idea for ETV and a recent workshop we held in Edinburgh, which was in partnership with Scottish Enterprise, Highlands and Islands Enterprise and Scottish Environmental Protection Agency. The idea for ETV is that eventually you should be able to do tests or do a verification for ETV which is transferable between water companies, because I think what a lot of SMEs are finding at the moment is that they take their, they get tests done, they go to a water company and they say, no, we need to do our own field test sites. They go to another one and they want to do their own too. And there's no, there's no link up, it's very siloed at the moment. So ETV should provide a link so that rather than having to spend a lot of time going to different technology purchasers, you just do one verification which they all should accept. And I think something that was really pushed at the workshop, we had a speaker who was originally the chief scientist at Scottish Water speaking, and his main point was, don't think that ETV will be the silver bullet for water industries. However, the sooner you go and talk to water industry, end users and water companies, to tell them about ETV, if they can then input into, okay, well, we'd accept it if it meets this, these requirements, is tested under these conditions, you're going to get a lot more out of the verification because, you've already engaged the end user. So what's included in water treatment and monitoring? Basically, the point I want to get across here is, don't think it's not included because it's very, very broad. It's not just about potable water treatment. There aren't rigid boundaries. WRC do a huge range of different technologies and work in a lot of different technology areas within water. So do get in touch with them if you think that your technology might benefit from ETV. So for materials, waste and resources, here are some eligibility requirements or key themes or that you might find features in a technology which might think about carrying out ETV. So it could be a technology which increases product efficiency. It could reduce the amount of resources needed, so fossil fuel consumption, water. So that's really like a life cycle analysis type approach. Could avoid the production of hazardous waste altogether, but also end-of-life products could generate from materials which would be a waste product. And so what's in scope here is a list, but again, it's very broad. So let me know if you want to get in touch with WRC. Anything from reusing, recycling, any different type of industry, so batteries, but it could be clothes, it could be biomass. It's very, very broad. I think that's the key point that the European Commission are keen to keep in mind, is that ETV should be inclusive, not exclusive, because obviously innovative technologies which come along are often so out there that if we try to define the scope too much, a lot of technologies would miss out. So that's an overview of what's in scope. In terms of the future of ETV, ETV at the moment is being run, as I said, through the European Commission. There are 7 active member states, so there's verification bodies in 7 member states at the moment. We've got the Czech Republic, Denmark, Finland, France, Italy, Poland and the UK. However, it's important to note that ETV is not a new scheme. So even though ETV in the European Union was launched at the beginning of last year, it's actually an established scheme in a number of countries. So the USA, Canada, Japan, Philippines, South Korea, and actually what I did mention was Denmark as well. Denmark had its own ETV scheme way before the European Commission caught on. These schemes have been successful in all countries and they're ongoing. And what has been decided since the European Commission launched their version of ETV, an international working group was pulled together which are drafting ISO standard for ETV, which will basically link up all of the schemes so that your ETV verification is internationally recognised in any country which is a signatory of ISO. So the first draft is going to be published in March. A number of our colleagues, so the colleague I mentioned who previously worked at Scottish Water and is now has his own company, Cobalt Management Solutions, and the Environment Agency are both on the steering committee for that ISO standard. So we're very heavily involved. Essentially, the feedback I'm getting from the Environment Agency is that the ISO standard is very, very similar to the European Commission version of ETV. So grandfather rights in terms of being able to convert your ETV into the ISO standard should be very straightforward. This is mainly due to the fact that the European Commission, though they were the last to catch on to ETV, they have pulled the best features from each of the schemes internationally and created a uniform approach to ETV, which is now being taken on by this ISO standard. So I'm going to give you a quick run through of the ETV process. I won't spend a lot of time on these slides because they're quite dry. They're really there more for you to look back on if you want a bit more information. But please ask a question at the end if you have any queries related to this content. So this is the overview of how ETV would work in real life if you came to us and wanted to carry out a verification. So I'll just take you through a slide on each of these stages. So the first phase is the contact phase. So it's quite self-explanatory. This is when we first are contacted by an SME. The European Commission have a number of templates. So for each phase of the ETV process, there's a template already in place, which either the SME or proposer or NPL, the verification body, fill out. So the quick scan is the first document to be filled out. It's a very, very quick overview of what the technology is, what it is you want tested and verified. Have you had any tests done? Does it meet legal requirements? And does it meet the eligibility requirements? Essentially, this quick scan, we then take, so a proposer will fill out the quick scan, telling us about the technology, telling us why it's environmentally less harmful than alternatives, how it's innovative, how is it market ready, and is it an energy, waste or water technology. With this quick scan, we then take this to the European Commission Technical Working Group. It's a completely confidential working group, so any information you share is under an NDA with us, but all people within the technical working group are also contracted with strict confidentiality requirements. And we get any feedback from the technical working group about the technology, perhaps about what other things they might want to think about verifying. So really it's a way of helping the proposer get as much out of the verification as possible by getting some independent advice from across Europe. So from the quick scan, we then we complete the quick scan after you've handed it back and give you an idea of, is it eligible, so does it meet the requirements, how much ballpark figure of how much it might cost, and the types of tests that we might need to get carried out. In practice, also at this point, we would talk to you about if there need to be more tests undertaken, the types of tests you could get done, where you could get these tests done, what test laboratories, so that for you, you can have quite early on an idea of how much it's going to cost for the whole verification. So we would then move to proposal phase. This basically expands on the quick scan document that you previously filled out. We really hone, refine the parameters which you want to have verified, making sure that enough is covered, that they're realistic, etc. Once it's agreed, a contract is written up. This is a template that the European Commission have produced. And then we also provide a detailed cost estimate of exactly how much it would cost and the timeline we propose. We also at this point would give you an idea of the funding options we have. So I'll talk at the end of this, at the end of the seminar about how much it might cost and what support there is for SMEs. So that's when we would really go into how much it actually will cost. So there's a figure which is if it was full price, but how much you're going to pay is a different thing. So verification protocol, essentially the planning phase. So we've gone into the contract now. We again redefine, make sure that the performance parameters are very clear and that everything is covered. We draft a verification protocol, which is one of the templates. We review any existing data you have, so going back to the point I made earlier about getting in touch with us early on if you're going to do testing. So if you've already done the tests at an accredited laboratory, you don't need to have any more tests done, as long as they fully meet the requirements of the performance parameters you wish to verify. And then we also plan the types of extra tests that might be required if you don't have significant test results already. So if further testing is required, it has to be carried out by an external test house. This is because we are accredited under ISO 17020 as a verification body, we have to be third party. It's really important for us and for UCAS, who will breathe down our necks if we get too involved in a testing. The European Commission require that test houses either have ISO 9001 or 17025. From NPL's point of view, we really want test houses to have 17025. If they don't have 17025, it just means that the verification will be more expensive because we then have to do witnessed audits, much bigger QA/QC procedures. So it's easier for everyone. If you can find a test body that's accredited to do your testing, it just means that it's going to be quicker and cheaper. So the test plan, again, is a template. It's agreed, it's written by the test house, but agreed with NPL. We then review any tests that are undertaken. And then we get to verification reporting. Now, verification reporting is reporting on absolutely everything that was done in the ETV process. So that's how operational conditions. We include all test results and previous tests that you might have undertaken, all quality management and control procedures. Now, this document is owned by the manufacturer because it is such an extensive document. There may be commercially sensitive information in there. So it's up to the proposer, it's up to you what you do with that verification report. We're happy to publish it, and the European Commission are happy to publish it if you wish so, but if you wish that part to be kept confidential, it's completely up to you. The final stage is the publication phase of the statement of verification. So the statement of verification is a separate document, and essentially it's the executive summary of what happened during your ETV verification. So it's a summary of the description of the technology, what the performance was and under what conditions, summary of the procedures and test bodies involved in the verification and any test results. Now, this is the final product, which is thought to be used by an SME to either get a large purchase order or to get your investor interested. This is the document that's published on the European Commission website. So I'll quickly run through some claims, so examples of the types of claims and basically performance parameters that you might think about doing for your technology. So the performance claims are central to the ETV process. It's what it's all about, essentially. It's about verifying how a technology works. Does it do what it says on the tin? Here you can think about making sure you're demonstrating environmental benefits. It has to be able to be verified. It has to be quantitative. It's all well and good saying that a technology saves so many tons of carbon every year, but does that depend on how it's used? These are the sort of things that we need to make sure are included. And these claims can evolve during the process. So I mentioned previously that you might think about that there's no pass or fail. Sorry, that's the point I was trying to get to. So there isn't any pass or fail, which means that if you're claiming that your technology works at a certain level, and then actually the tests show that it's not, it may be that it's working above what you thought, but it may be that it's working slightly below. That doesn't mean that you failed the ETV. You haven't failed ETV. It just means that we will shift the performance claims to meet the verifiable data and evidence. So the content, so it has to describe what the technology does. Think about where it can be applied and used, so particular environments, perhaps, particular industries. Think about the operational conditions, innovative aspects. So if you're trying to go above and beyond what standard would detail. Think about benefits, environmental benefits, but also market requirements. So if there are regulations and legal requirements, you may as well include them in your ETV statement. Therefore, you're not going to have to do those tests again or do another certification process. Everyone's heard of this before, I know, but it's something that as a verification body we're always thinking about, is it a smart claim? So is it specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time over a certain period of time? Now, there is a reason why there's a picture of turkeys, an angry-looking turkey. An example from NPL as to the types of claims that we see manufacturers asking us for are in our energy efficient lighting laboratory, which I showed earlier. We've been working, and actually we're starting a new verification with the agricultural sector. So previously, a project we worked on was with a company producing LED lights specifically for turkey farms. And you think, for turkey farms, they're very energy intensive and they have the lights on a lot of the time. Same for a lot of poultry farming. And it makes sense to switch to LED lighting. It's longer lasting and far more energy efficient. However, what they realised is that turkeys actually see light in a different spectrum to humans. So our visible spectrum of light is completely different to turkeys. Turkeys actually see a broader spectrum of light, so they see both infrared light, but UV light. And what they realised was that turkeys need UV light to identify one another. So if an LED light doesn't have significant amounts of UV spectrum in the light that it emits, the turkeys can be very aggressive and actually become cannibalistic. And so we worked with a technology provider who wanted to verify and hone and make sure that they were producing an LED light which produced the right spectrum of light which turkeys would then be able to use to see one another, and it's now marketed as a turkey calming light, and it's available internationally and it's very successful. So that's the kind of thing, you know, when you think about what ETV might be used for, or the kinds of claims that you might want to think about, something like, you know, a really innovative application of a technology which you think is established, but actually your end user is a turkey, and so something like ETV can help you to just provide the assurance that your turkeys aren't going to become cannibalistic. For more information, this guide for proposers is a great document. It's very easy to read and it really gives you an overview of all the things that I've covered today. So lastly, I'll give you a quick rundown of funding options. So headline figures for ETV done on a previous study. So this isn't what we found. This is before the pilot programme was launched. The European Commission undertook a number of studies and reviews. They found that the costs could range from 3,000 to 50,000 euros for testing, 5,000 to 50,000 euros for verification, and 7,500 to 32,500 in administrative costs to developers, so to the SMEs. From NPL's point of view, I mean, we've said here, the real range shows that the cost varies completely depending on how complex the technology is. We personally have found that costs were a lot lower than that to start with. For example, we're working with a technology provider who has a kind of switch which can use some of the energy from your solar PV modules when it's producing a lot of electricity. It can divert some of that electricity and heat your boiler, immersion boiler, and their testing came out at, I think, 100 to 200 pounds. So don't be scared off by the headline figure. Verification costs again, from the technologies which we've seen come in so far, including the types of help that NPL have, they're coming out between £8,000 and £12,000. So it's a lot lower than what was expected, and that doesn't include the kinds of fundings and grants which are available to SMEs for this type of verification work. So as I mentioned, NPL have a Technology Innovation Fund which we have internally to help SMEs access NPL's expertise. We know that we're a world-renowned but quite expensive laboratory, and so SMEs who meet the eligibility requirements can get a reduction of up to 50% on NPL consultancy services, which can make a huge difference for something like accessing ETV. Eligibility requirements need to be an SME, need to be UK-based, and new to NPL and be innovative, but if you're applying for ETV, you're innovative already. And then this slide, just to give you some examples. At the workshop we held in Edinburgh a couple of weeks ago, we had Scottish Enterprise who presented about the types of instruments that are available through the Scottish SMEs, and there are a huge amount of them. Scottish Enterprise and Highland Science Enterprise are very, very keen on ETV. They were both presenting and partnering on the event that we ran recently, and they have a number of mechanisms in place which SMEs can access if they would want to carry out ETV verification. As well as that, this website that I've listed here, Low Carbon Funding, is a really great website for finding grant funding for different types of technologies. So here, there's a thing, search for funding, and you can choose the different types of funding technologies. So if you're a solar technology, fuel cell technology, lighting, it lists the different types of funding available to your specific technology area. Also, Horizon 2020 recently released their new funding options. One of them is an SME instrument, and that, according to both Scottish Enterprise and the Environment Agency, they see that as being a very good a mechanism for funding ETV. And I listed there some other funding options, so TSB Innovation Vouchers, Debt Capacity Energy Entrepreneurs Fund, Energy Saving Trust have some funding. So NPL is very keen to help SMEs find relevant funds. So don't be put off by the fact that it's a commercial service. If you think ETV might be relevant to you, get in contact with us and we can help you find relevant funding streams. So just to summarise, ETV is for novel technologies that are facing barriers to market. The pilot programme covers energy, waste and water technologies. The key premise of ETV is that it verifies specific performance parameters or claims of a specific technology. So rather than a standard that has minimum requirements, ETV actually says a technology does what it says on the tin, and that may be that it performs at a better rate, better efficiency, or a better, more durable lifetime than what's already out there on the market. ETV is an international scheme, so there are already schemes across the world. However, they're now being joined up with an ISO standard, which is being led by the Canadian version of ETV, and the draft will be released in March. And costs will vary, but support is available for SMEs, so do get in touch if you think that this might be relevant to you. Thank you very much. I've been talking for far longer than I thought I would, so I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. That was really interesting with very, I think, good points and tips about funding especially, which is of interest to SMEs, how to really undertake ETV. We are still waiting for some questions from our online viewers, and I would like to encourage them now to ask questions. But as I was listening to your presentation, I noticed a few things and also wrote down a few questions. First of all, I would say that it is interesting that the ETV list could be seen from 3 points of view and providing 3 benefits. First of all, state of the art in certain areas, but also baseline for future development for those who are interested to innovate, just to compare what is already out there and what they want to do, so to have clear idea. And also at the end, ETV lists are there to promote, in a way, innovations that have been approved or that have passed ETV or obtained ETV. That's just a comment, a remark on the value of ETV, different other values that it provides. But what I wanted to ask also is, what is your experience on the take-up of ETV? How much SMEs really do know about ETV scheme?
It's a really interesting question, and I think the main barrier that ETV has faced so far is the lack of awareness of the scheme. So especially within Europe, it's a new scheme, and so it's been the job of verification bodies across Europe to spend the last year, so since it launched, trying to raise awareness as much as possible through SME networks. But also very importantly for us, we spend quite a lot of time and energy trying to contact and bridge the gap with end users and investors, because there needs to be a market pull for this. ETV is all well and good. However, if you knew that your investors were, big six or water companies, etc., said that if you had to undertake an ETV, they would look on your product preferentially, there would be a real, drive and a real reason to undertake ETV. So that's something that we're constantly doing through strategic meetings. We're also joining up with things like the Debt Energy Entrepreneurs Fund, so trying to factor it into programs that are already underway, but trying to engage with end users to make sure that they're aware of the benefits of ETV.
Excellent. Could you tell us how much time does a verification process take in principle? What is the shortest, what is the longest, what is medium time, just to have an image of how much time companies should plan for this process?
It's a difficult question to answer because ETV is not like a standard or a certification scheme where there are a set number of requirements. It really depends on the technology. So it could range from anything from a couple of months to if you need to do in-depth field trials, for example, for especially maybe more for water or waste technologies. It could be anything, 6 months, a 6-month verification. I think the main thing that we try and stress is that because ETV is all about having a tailor-made verification, there aren't any standards. So if you speak to a verification body, we can then give you an idea of how complex the technology is, how much testing needs to be carried out, and from that, what kind of timeline you should expect.
Okay. You mentioned that ETV undertaken at a National Physical Laboratory is for energy, water and waste, innovations related to these areas. And especially energy generation. I did not notice, apart from fuel cells, anything about innovations related to energy storage. How much will that be a focus of testing, or will you offer that type of testing for different types of energy storage innovations?
It's a good point. I think we highlighted in that slide 5 key areas where NPL works quite heavily. So we know that these are areas where we'll probably do quite a lot of work. However, the boundaries are very loose for what's included in ETV. So any technology, we've had people come to us looking for things around building energy efficiency, energy storage, novel types of heating technologies. So, the boundary is very wide. That was an example of the types of technologies that you might see or might be sort of common technologies to see, but it really is very broad.
Regarding the capacity of NPL to meet the requirements of all businesses that might wish to apply for this scheme, does NPL have the capacity and testing facilities that can meet all the requirements? Does it collaborate with any other institutions, organizations, universities? Is there a potential for engagement of universities in testing?
Yeah, completely. I think that's one of the key things for ETV. One of the main requirements of verification bodies is that they don't carry out the testing. And so we want to work very closely with universities, test houses, research institutes, who would be able to undertake the testing required for ETV. And it can work in both directions. So we've already been in discussions with people like, Power Networks Demonstration Centre at University of Strathclyde. They're a test house for a sort of test site for technologies looking to be implemented on the national grid. And it's in one way we can refer clients to them. So if we have a technology which needs a specific type of testing that they can undertake, we can say, you should carry out the testing at this facility. But in the same way, another group was the Energy Technology Centre, which I'm not sure, they're based in Scotland. They actually have technologies come to them wanting testing, and then they say, okay, well, if you're going to do this testing, you might want to think about doing ETV as well, because it will increase the output of your results, and as you mentioned, it's a great marketing and promotional tool. So it works both ways, but having partner organisations as test bodies and also we often will need perhaps external experts, so where we are verifying a technology where we don't have in-house the particular technological competence, we would like to work closely with universities, for example, to try and build a network of ETV relevant contacts.
Excellent. That's very, very much of interest to universities involved in our project. We have some questions now from our online viewers. For example, Linda Forbes of Scriblib Consultancy asks, what percentage of applications are tested at NPL as opposed to other test laboratories?
Well, I think I slightly answered that in the previous question. So if we're undertaking ETV, we don't do the testing. However, we are an accredited laboratory for a number of areas. So energy efficient lighting is one, but we also do a lot of that around pollution monitoring, sensor networks, gas sensing. So it's very broad. So we do have a lot of test laboratories, obviously with the National Measurement Institute. So that's really a big part of what we do. So if a technology, sometimes what we found is people have come to us looking to undertake ETV, but their technology doesn't fit within the themes, so energy, waste or water, so especially in pollution monitoring. However, we are an accredited laboratory for things like MCerts, but also we have a lot of expertise in a number of different areas. So we can then do the testing with them and actually provide them with verification or a test certificate outside of ETV. It is envisaged that after the 3-year pilot programme, more technology areas will be added to ETV. Air pollution was one of them, agriculture was another one. So there are more technology areas planned to be included in the full-scale ETV programme.
I see. Here is another question now from Sterling Hoyson of University of Strathclyde, Glasgow. Very specific. Does NPL have access to a false sun to test, obviously, some technology that uses sunlight?
I'm not sure. I'm not the scientist. I imagine that then would be related to the energy efficient lighting laboratory. I can imagine the NPL does. I mean, we do have most of the sort of state-of-the-art testing equipment. However, I can take that question away and get back to you specifically with an answer from the scientists in the relevant area, because I'm sure they will know off the top of their head.
Okay. We do not have any more questions from our online viewers, so maybe you would like to make some final comments or suggestions or summary or requests or invitations to our online viewers to engage with NPL, and what is the easiest route to do that?
Definitely. So my main message would be to just get in touch. If you have a technology which you need some help with. I mean, outside of ETV, NPL works with a really broad range of stakeholders. So whether it's that you undertake ETV or you may want some tests done on a specific part of your technology, we also are quite a useful way for small companies especially to access larger grants. Because we can act as a sort, we put together consortium. So we have, especially within the Centre for Carbon Measurement, we run a lot of consortia around methane measurements, climate data, but also fuel cells. We run quite a large consortium of, and in that way you're linked up with large industry partners. So we're working with the likes of Honda or end users, but also with SMEs who are developing these fuel cells. The same goes for solar energy, energy efficient lighting, etc. So the main point would be to get in contact. My details are on the slides, and I'd be really interested in hearing, even to have some feedback about what you gathered from my presentation in terms of, do you now understand what the scheme is, and if you want any more information.
Well, thank you very much, Jessica. We are very happy that the links worked well. And I really am certain that our online viewers have benefited from your presentation. And there are obviously many opportunities for maybe future collaboration between universities, between our project and NPL. So So we'll certainly be in touch, but once again, thank you very much for the excellent presentation. Of course, this webinar will be available as video recording on our website in a few days, so you might wish also to point to other businesses to watch the webinar.
Yeah.
Well, webinar, which will be on 10th March. And the topic is innovations for sustainable building design and refurbishment, the outputs of Kickstart online project. The speakers will be David Moore of Robert Gordon University, Sue Rowe of Heriot-Watt University, and Tim Sharp of Glasgow School of Art. This webinar will provide an overview of the innovations developed with the support of our previous project, Kickstart Online. It will provide an overview of the final legacy of the project, which are knowledge base, which is available on our website, on the website of that project, and also the joint book published in November 2013. Please book places online for this future webinar, and thank you for watching this one. Thank you.